Some people enjoy a fulfilling and enriched life. They're magnetic, so sunny, so bright, cheerful, and attractive that they never have to force or even to request an entrance anywhere. The door is flung wide open, and they are invited to enter. Their very presence is soothing and pleasing. They know how to persuade, almost without uttering a word. They're popular in their social and community groups, and in their jobs and careers they move ahead rapidly. It's hard to escape the charm of a winning personality, and it's difficult to snub the person who possesses it. There's something about that person that pulls you toward him or her. People are like magnets. Just as a steel magnet drawn through a pile of trash will pull out only the things that have an affinity for it, so we are constantly drawing to us the things and the people that respond to our thoughts and ideals. We attract to ourselves, our environment, our associates, and our general condition. These things have come to us on the physical plane because we've connected with them mentally. They are our affinities, and will remain with us as long as the affinity for them continues to exist in our minds. Whether we'll live a truly fulfilling life will depend to a great degree upon the quality of the impression we make upon others. It means everything, therefore, to develop a magnetic, forceful personality. Wouldn't you like to be such an irresistible person? Well, you can. These traits are not necessarily inborn. Anybody who truly desires to develop a warm, outgoing, welcoming personality can do so, if he or she masters the techniques that contribute to one. This is not a very difficult thing to do. Anyone can cultivate the ability to please and to strengthen the character that will make him or her a success in the world. In this book, we have synthesized these principles into 10 steps that will guide listeners to a more fulfilling life. To get the most out of this audiobook, listen to all of it first to absorb the overall concepts. Then go back and listen to each chapter and start applying the guidelines for achieving each of the areas covered. This will start you on the track that has brought success, happiness, and enrichment to the millions of men and women who have studied and implemented Dale Carnegie's teachings. Step 1. Develop self-confidence. While our interactions and relationships with others are critical to having a fulfilling life, our first priority must be having a good relationship with ourselves. If we lack a sense of our self-worth, we don't have a chance of projecting an image of ourselves as someone that others will want to know and trust. Creating a good self-image and holding that image out to the world are the first order of business in our success and happiness. Believe in yourself. Have faith in your abilities. Without a humble but reasonable confidence in your own powers, you cannot be successful or happy. Dale Carnegie. Self-acceptance. Self-acceptance comes from our ability to accept ourselves as human beings with all of our faults, and once we do so, we can then focus on our positive sides, the strengths and positive qualities that make us who we are. When our focus is on these areas, both confidence and self-esteem are positively influenced. It is all too common for people to focus on their weaknesses instead of their strengths. Doing this does more damage than good. We must help ourselves and others focus on our positive qualities. Formulate and stamp indelibly on your mind a mental picture of yourself as succeeding. Hold this picture tenuously. Never permit it to fade. Your mind will seek to develop the picture. Do not build up obstacles in your imagination. Norman Vincent Peale. Self-respect. The key to developing self-respect is to focus on our past successes and achievements, and to acknowledge ourselves for the good we have done. It is far easier to dwell on failures, and we may find that others are only too eager to point them out to us. Our perspective changes and our confidence builds when we spend time contemplating our successes. A valuable exercise to perform is to create a success inventory. This is a list of successes and accomplishments that we have had throughout our lives. At first, it may be difficult to build a list, but with persistence, we can keep adding to our list and building our confidence. Begin with a file folder and start putting positive symbols and records of our successes in it today. These may include letters from teachers commending our schoolwork, memos from employers about contributions made in our jobs, emails from customers or clients thanking us for good service, letters of thanks from nonprofit organizations where we contributed time and effort, and similar papers. We can also include greeting cards from friends that are particularly warm or complimentary. In addition, create a log in which we can enter our accomplishments and conduct of which we are particularly proud. When we feel blue or inadequate about a current situation, we can read this file and remind ourselves that we succeeded before and can do it again. Positive self-talk. All of us engage in self-talk, the things that we repeat to ourselves about ourselves. When we add the previous items together, we lay the foundation for positive self-talk. Our arguments for our worth are backed by evidence. The stronger and more compelling the evidence, the more believable and powerful the message. We might feel as though our thoughts are things that just arise at random, but they are actually the only thing that we have any control over. We have the choice between engaging in negative self-talk, like, "I'm a loser," or "I'll never get anywhere in life," or positive self-talk, like, "I've got talent," or "I'm someone that others want to be around." Expect the best. In addition to having good thoughts about ourselves, we should develop the habit of having a hopeful attitude, of believing that things are going to turn out well and not ill, that we are going to succeed and not fail, that no matter what may or may not happen, we are going to be happy. In building our self-confidence, there is nothing else so helpful as the carrying of this optimistic, expectant attitude, the attitude that always looks for and expects the best, the highest, the happiest, and never allowing ourselves to get into a pessimistic, discouraged mood. We must believe with all our heart that we will do what we were made to do. We must never for an instant harbor any doubt of it. We may be thinking, "I can't help that I get pessimistic, that's just the way I am." Or, "In fact, things usually don't work out for me. I'll just be disappointed if I expect to get what I want." As to the first idea, we actually can help the fact that we are pessimistic. Who is in charge of what we're thinking? We are. So if we have a pessimistic thought, we can replace it with a positive one. This way of thinking actually does become a habit. Over time, we don't have to switch our thoughts with great deliberation. As to the second idea, that things don't work out for us, that might be true because we don't expect them to. We don't project an attitude that we are open and worthy of good things, and so we don't attract them to us. We don't take the necessary action steps to achieve our goals because we think that we can't succeed. Why bother? This type of thinking will never be in your interest. It can only lead to failure and unhappiness. It doesn't matter what we're trying to do or be, so long as we always assume an expectant, hopeful, optimistic attitude regarding it. This puts us on the road to grow in all our abilities. Take some risks. We can also build our self-confidence by being willing to take risks. We can approach new experiences as opportunities to learn, rather than occasions to win or lose. Doing so opens us up to new possibilities and can increase our sense of self-esteem. Not doing so inhibits personal growth and reinforces whatever beliefs we may have that a new possibility is an opportunity for failure. By not taking the chance that something we support might not work out, we avoid the agony of defeat, but never experience the thrill of victory. Taking risks doesn't mean we should be reckless or careless in how we behave. It just means that we shouldn't be fearful of trying something new or taking a chance that we might not experience the ideal outcome of our actions. Reasonable people take reasonable risks, but by definition, a risk may not succeed. Successful business executives take risks with every decision they make. However, they maximize their chance of success by careful research and analysis before making the decision. But when that decision finally has to be made, the manager must be willing to risk the possible loss of money, time, energy, and emotion. Without risk, there is no possibility of gain. By taking chances, even if the outcome is not what we would most like, we show both others and ourselves that we're confident in our abilities. Building self-esteem. Self-esteem may be defined as feeling good about oneself. People with high self-esteem believe that they are more likely to succeed than fail in most things they do. They know that other people respect them. This does not mean that one is unrealistically optimistic about everything one does, nor does it mean that we should be arrogant or consider ourselves better than others. It simply means that we recognize ourselves as valuable, and we treat ourselves accordingly. Persons with high self-esteem can accept untoward events and not let them overwhelm or deflate them. In a study conducted by the Gallup Organization for Newsweek magazine, 89% of the respondents said that self-esteem is important in motivating a person to work harder and to succeed. 63% said that time and effort spent in developing self-esteem is worthwhile, while only 34% felt that time and effort could be better spent on work. Many people have little self-esteem and a low opinion of their own capabilities. They look upon themselves as failures, and when they do succeed, they consider it a fluke. Why should this be? Kevin was a bright and personable young man, but felt that he was dull and would never achieve anything in his life. Despite his high grades in school, he did not apply for top-level colleges because he felt he was not good enough to be accepted. His guidance counselor probed to discover why he had such low self-esteem. Kevin's father was a dynamic corporate executive who demanded perfection from his children and was never satisfied with less than perfect performance. When Kevin received a grade of 90, his father wanted to know why it was not 100. His father tended to dominate family conversations and rejected any disagreements with his ideas by any of his children. Because he could never seem to please his father, over time, Kevin developed the feeling that he was an inadequate person. Sarah had always been a self-confident child. She excelled in school and had demonstrated talents in art and music. However, when she completed college and entered the work world, she tried a series of unsatisfactory jobs and was unhappy and unsuccessful in each of them. Her self-confidence eroded, and she began to feel that she would never succeed as an adult. Kevin had developed deep-seated psychological problems, and it's unlikely that he'd be able to repair his self-esteem without professional help. At the suggestion of his guidance counselor, he started a series of sessions with a psychotherapist, who helped him see that he was immensely capable and helped him develop a healthy idea of his worth. Lots of people with low self-esteem, however, do not need psychologists. They can help themselves. Sarah recalled how well she performed in school and realized that her failures were not due to lack of capability, but perhaps to wrong choices in the jobs she held. She thought, "I was good in school and in the work I did with my art and music. I have been a success and I can be one again." With that idea, she rethought her career plans and began seeking jobs in areas closer to her real interests. This resulted in locating a job that used her talents and in which she was deeply valued by her supervisor and coworkers. Self-esteem is important, not only to success in our endeavors, but also to our total well-being. People with high self-esteem are happier and often healthier people than those without it. We must keep up our morale. Don't let failures get us down. We will suffer failures and disappointments in our lives, but by dwelling on our successes, on the good times, our self-esteem will remain high and help us overcome the temporary downturns. We are who we think we are. So long as you are still worried about what others think of you, you are owned by them. Only when you require no approval from outside yourself can you own yourself. Neil Donald Walsh, American author. There are times when any one of us may doubt our abilities and our accomplishments and find our self-confidence plummeting. To make matters worse, we emphasize and dwell on what we think others think of us in order to determine how we feel about our ability and ourselves. Relying on the feedback of others is a precarious way to treat our self-worth. Why on earth would we give up our power to feel good about who we are to somebody else? No man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus, Greek philosopher. William Becker, a mid-20th century clergyman and writer, admonished his readers, "Never mind what people think of you. They may overestimate or underestimate you. Until they discover your real worth, your success depends mainly upon what you think of yourself and whether you believe in yourself. You can succeed if nobody else believes it, but you will never succeed if you don't believe it yourself." Sum and substance. Self-esteem is best defined as feeling good about oneself. People with high self-esteem believe that they are more likely to succeed than fail in most things they do. We will suffer failures and disappointments in our lives, but by dwelling on our successes instead of these failures, our self-esteem will remain high and help us overcome the temporary downturns. Too often, we are more concerned about what others think of us than what we think about ourselves. We can succeed even if no one else believes in us, but we will never succeed if we don't believe in ourselves. Step 2. Set and reach achievable goals. All successful people start with a goal. Establishing goals and working toward their achievement are important steps on the long road to success. By knowing where we are going and how we plan to get there, we will be able to focus our time, energy, and emotions and start on the right track toward reaching those goals. Start with a dream. We start with a dream, a vision of the future. In the dream, we are rich, happy, and maybe even famous. Most people do dream of such a future, but in most cases, that's all it will ever be, a dream. Successful people have had those dreams too, but they turned those dreams into goals, and in turn, into reality. Their dreams were not vague hopes for success, but dreams of specific achievements that they aimed for. Bill Gates dreamed of computer software that would enable everybody, not just big organizations, to use the power of computers. Great actors, artists, musicians, writers, accountants, yes, accountants, dreamed, not just of fame, but of the way they would use their talents to achieve success. If you want to live a happy life, tie it to a goal, not to people or things. Albert Einstein. Converting dreams into goals. Dreaming is not limited to geniuses. All successful people report that their success started with a hope, a dream, which led to a goal, which led to a plan of action, and inevitably to accomplishing the goal. Unfortunately, too many dreamers remain just that, dreamers. The dreams remain dreams. When we convert dreams into goals, they are no longer fantasies, but objectives that we can set before us as a roadmap to success. We must bring to our dreams a purpose, a determination that we will do all that we can to make them come true. A woman who had a dream and converted it into a successful goal is the clothes designer Rachel Roy. Rachel dreamed that she could create a sophisticated look for herself and other women that would foster positive self-esteem. She and her family went school shopping once a year. She was disturbed by the lack of interesting clothing choices in a local store and was convinced that if she had the opportunity, she could offer better styles. Her mother told her that this was the job of a buyer. At that moment, she said, her dream became her goal, to become a buyer in the fashion field. Roy's first job was as stock clerk. She moved rapidly to assistant manager, to personal shopper, to stylist in various stores. She was soon designing fashions and was on the road to a senior position in her company. She made a point to learn everything she could about the fashion business and eventually started her own company. Roy's designs were acclaimed by the industry, and today she is considered one of the foremost designers in the fashion industry. There is a significant distance between the wishers and the doers. Rachel Roy was more than a dreamer and a wisher. She turned her dream into a goal and worked hard to achieve that goal. Guidelines for setting goals. To make goals more than just pipe dreams, they should combine the following elements. 1. Clearly articulated. Indicate in clear terms what we wish to accomplish. Be specific and firm in stating the goal. For example, saying, "My goal is to be the best salesperson in my company." Sounds good, but it's better to be more specific. My goal is to reach a sales volume of X dollars for the next fiscal year, and 10% more each year for the next 3 years. Now we know the target, and our subconscious mind will help concentrate our efforts on reaching those figures. 2. Reasonable. Unless the goals set can be attained, goal setting is pointless. To assure a goal's reasonableness, break the long-term goal into attainable sub-goals. For example, long-term goal: exhibit my paintings in a prestigious art gallery within 3 years. Intermediate goals: to complete X number of canvases by December of next year, to mount a showing at a local art gallery by July of the following year, to be reviewed in an art journal by December of that year. Short-term goals: to finish one painting each month, to bring my work to X number of galleries each month for the owner's assessment. 3. Inspiring. If we set a goal that is too easily attained, it will not motivate us to do more than minimum work. We should set goals that will inspire us to keep moving ahead and to work that much harder to achieve them. Achievers recognize that once a goal is reached, they should immediately set another goal that will make them stretch and continue to improve and grow. 4. Action-based. Unless the actions that will be taken to implement the goals are noted, the goals are no more than dreams. In addition to its physical components, action has mental and emotional components as well. Mentally, we must be prepared to think about our goals every spare moment and what actions must be taken to realize them. Emotionally, we must not allow ourselves to be fearful or overwhelmed. We must simply remember our determination to take one step after another. If we meet with opposition along the way, we must not permit ourselves to give in to discouragement. And 5. Measurable. It is not always possible to quantify goals. Some goals can be measured in financial or other numerical terms. We can set sales figures that we wish to attain by the month, quarter, or year, in terms of units of product or dollar value. We can set production goals by amount. Even intangible goals, which cannot be quantified, can be established in measurable terms. The major goal can be broken into segments and timetables set for the completion of each segment. In this way, we can measure how close we are in reaching each of the segments and fine-tune our activities to assure that they will be accomplished in a timely manner. 6. Committed to paper. One way to ensure that our goals will not be forgotten or lost in our hectic day-to-day lives is to write them down. Make a list of long-term goals. Break them into intermediate and short-term actions. Write them in large letters and post them where we can see them every day, over our desk, on the refrigerator, on the mirror. Read them, memorize them, reread them, and ask each day, what am I doing to accomplish these goals? 7. Flexible. There are times when circumstances change, and the goal we set is no longer realistic or relevant. Economic conditions may not be favorable for starting a particular enterprise. Technological innovations may have made the goal obsolete. We may have made errors in our research, and the goal is not feasible. This does not necessarily mean the goal must be abandoned altogether. It may just require new thinking or more study. If faced with such a situation, review what has transpired and make necessary adjustments. If we fail to meet a particular goal, we must not give over to frustration, or worse yet, give up. Review what has transpired, evaluate the situation, and make necessary adjustments. 8. Require effort. Once we have reached a goal, set another that will make us stretch to continue to improve and grow. When Ben started his fitness program, he was told that if he swam 30 laps 4 days a week, he would keep in good shape. It didn't take him long to achieve that goal. Ben felt good about his accomplishment and decided he wanted to improve his endurance. He immediately strove to reach a new goal of 40 laps each time he went to the pool. 9. Public knowledge. In most weight loss programs, participants are advised to let their families know how much weight they intend to lose and to keep their families advised of their progress. Why? When we share our goal with others, they will support us in helping reach it. When we are tempted to give up, they encourage us to continue. Karen had dropped out of college when she married so she could work until her husband completed his education. Then she planned to return and get her degree. The birth of her children changed this plan. Now, 10 years later, Karen has been able to resume her education. Managing a house, working an 8-hour day, and going to school at night is tough. From time to time, Karen feels it's not worth the effort. But because her husband, children, and friends know how important finishing school is to her, they help her with errands, cheer her on, and encourage her to keep going. And finally, 10. Review our progress. Not all goals can be quantified so that they can be easily measured, but when this is possible, set specific standards and timetables. When not quantifiable, develop a way of measuring how close we come to attaining our goals. When Lee set his sales goals for the year, he expected to increase his annual volume by 8%. This meant he would have to open at least 4 new accounts or increase the sales to his current customers. He broke this down into monthly goals that could be easily measured against his actual sales. If business did not measure up to the monthly goal, he could take necessary steps immediately to get back on track. As Human Resources Director of her organization, Kathy could not set quantifiable goals. Her objectives for the next 12 months included setting up a new training program for word processor operators, studying and reporting to management on a new type of benefits package, and designing a performance review system for administrative and professional personnel. She broke each of these objectives into segments and set timetables for each segment. In this way, she could measure how close she was to reaching each of the segments and fine-tune her activities to assure she would accomplish all of them by the end of the year. Reach high, for stars lie hidden in you. Dream deep, for every dream precedes the goal. Rabindranath Tagore, Indian Nobel Prize-winning author. If we believe, we will achieve. In addition to setting out action steps to achieve our goals, it is important for us to believe that we will achieve them. If we visualize ourselves having attained the outcome we desire as vividly as possible and try with all our might to realize it, it is more likely we will succeed in actually doing so. We must keep our ambition persistently in our minds until we feel its uplift and realization in our lives. Prosperity begins in the mind, but it is an impossibility when our mental attitude is hostile to it. It is fatal to work for a goal while we expect something else, because everything must be created mentally first and is bound to follow its mental pattern. We cannot become prosperous if we expect or half expect to remain poor. We tend to get what we expect, and to expect nothing is to get nothing. The habit of looking at everything constructively, from the bright, hopeful side, the side of faith and assurance, instead of from the side of doubt and uncertainty, and the habit of believing the best is going to happen, that the right must triumph, that truth is bound to conquer error, that harmony and health are the reality, these are the attitudes of the optimist, which leads us into transforming our lives. When defeat comes, accept it as a signal that your plans are not sound. Rebuild those plans and set sail once more toward your coveted goal. Napoleon Hill, author of Think and Grow Rich. Sum and substance. Successful people report that their success started with a hope, a dream, which led to a goal, which led to a plan of action, and inevitably to accomplishing the goal. Developing goals that are reasonable and achievable is the first step to success. Follow these 10 guidelines for setting goals. 1. Goals should be clearly stated. 2. Goals should be reasonably attainable. 3. Goals should be inspiring. 4. Goals should be action-based. 5. Goals should be measurable. 6. Goals should be written down. 7. Goals should be flexible. 8. Goals should require effort. 9. Goals should be shared with others who can support us. And finally, 10. Goals should be reviewed periodically to measure our progress. In addition to taking the right action steps, we must believe in our ability to achieve our goals. Step 3. Project a positive image. Our image is the way in which we express ourselves to the outside world. Some people have a strong positive idea of who they are, and they send this positive winning idea out to others. People who possess this magnetic power unconsciously impress everyone with whom they come in contact. The moment people come into their presence, they have a favorable impression. They want to get to know them better. Wouldn't it be great if people reacted to us in this way? The first impression we send. Each time a new person meets us, that person takes just 30 seconds to form a whole laundry list of impressions, beliefs, or assumptions regarding who we are and what we are about. And those assumptions are far more significant than how much we paid for our clothes or whether or not our hair color is natural. Those impressions encompass everything from our education level to our financial situation, our career success, even things as subjective as our honesty and integrity. All those beliefs are formed almost subconsciously in the first 30 seconds. The old adage, you can't judge a book by its cover, makes good sense, but unfortunately, most of us do judge people by their cover, their appearance and demeanor. If a negative or undesirable impression is made on that first contact, it may permeate all relations with that party for years to come. It takes a little thought and effort to establish the basis for making good impressions, but it is well worth the effort. Keep in mind that we'll project a much better image to others when our ideas about ourselves are positive and loving. How can you have charisma? Be more concerned about making others feel good about themselves than you are making them feel good about you. Dan Ryland, American clergyman. We may think that people like Lisa were born that way. Some facets of our personalities are inborn, our physical appearance, basic intelligence, and some talents, but each of us has the capacity to develop our better innate traits. It's not easy to grow into a charismatic person that we want to be, but it starts with a strong desire and commitment to develop an outgoing, cheerful, optimistic, and positive demeanor, an image that others will find pleasing. If we truly love ourselves and have a strong desire and commitment to do so, we can develop that magnetism. Our appearance plays a major part in how we are perceived. It can be an effective door opener or door closer. Some of the factors that may impress others, either positively or negatively, are beyond our control. We cannot change our basic physical appearance, but we can make the most of our assets and minimize what may be perceived to be defects. One doesn't have to have movie star good looks to make a positive impression. Good grooming, appropriate dress, a pleasant smile, and proper manners are the first steps in making a good personal impression. We can maximize our chances for success by dressing in a way that communicates positive messages about our abilities and us. With the widespread adoption of business casual dress codes, there is no right way to dress for business today. We must do some research to find what is appropriate in our industry, region, and culture. Appearance and personality are only the first steps in creating and maintaining the image others have of us. We must develop it by becoming genuinely interested in other people. Dale Carnegie. Maintaining a positive attitude. Attitude is important in every area of the image we project, but nowhere is it more critical than in our attitude toward ourselves. Eleanor Roosevelt is often quoted as saying, "No one can make you feel inferior without your permission." Most of us, even the most seemingly successful, carry around a mental suitcase full of negative ideas about ourselves. They may have come from parents, teachers, bosses, colleagues, and of course our own imaginations. But we have the capacity to recolor those messages and make positive beliefs our conscious choice. In addition to a positive attitude toward who we are and what we have to offer, we must display a positive attitude toward others. If we believe in our hearts that the world is full of friends, we will wear that belief like a well-fitted suit, and it will send a signal to those we meet that indeed we are someone they want to be friends with. If we don't look at each day as a blessing to be enjoyed and savored, we will have an unhappy and most likely unproductive life. We cannot attract people toward us or perform well on the job while we harbor unfriendly thoughts toward others. Our faculties only give their best when working in perfect harmony. A kindly attitude, a feeling of goodwill toward everyone, will lead to a life of peace and equanimity. It will minimize discord in our lives and help us maintain harmonious relations with others. If we maintain kindly, loving, helpful, sympathetic thoughts, feel friendly toward everybody, and carry no bitterness, hatred, or jealousy in our hearts, we will create an attractive, happy, and sunny image. Think about it. People who are cynical, who put other people down, or who feel that being snarky will make them cool and attractive, are really showing themselves to be insecure and small-minded. Who wants to be around them for any period of time? If they feel comfortable belittling others, why wouldn't they feel comfortable belittling us? The men and women who have succeeded best in life have always been cheerful and hopeful, who went about their business with a smile on their faces and took the changes and chances of this mortal life, facing rough and smooth alike as it came. Do you like to associate with people who are grumpy, who complain, and are unhappy? Or do you like to associate with people who are happy and radiant? Their feelings and attitudes are just as contagious as the measles, so you want to radiate what you want other people to have. Dale Carnegie. Sending out an image of enthusiasm. Charismatic people are enthusiastic about their lives, their work, their relationships, and their goals. The word enthusiasm comes from two Greek words meaning the God within, and it comes from deep within ourselves. People who are enthusiastic about themselves and their actions undertake their work with the assurance of success. Employees who go to their tasks with energy, determination, and enthusiasm give confidence to their employer that the thing they undertake will not only be done, but that it will also be well done. The world has always made way for enthusiasm. It multiplies our power, raises whatever ability we have to its highest. Enthusiasm permeates the atmosphere and imparts to others the assurance that we can do the thing we attempt. As time goes on, we are reinforced not only by the power of our own enthusiasm, but also by that of all who know us. Our friends and acquaintances affirm and reaffirm our ability to succeed and make each successive triumph easier to attain than its predecessor. Our self-poise, confidence, and ability increase in direct ratio to the number of our achievements. With an enthusiastic demeanor, we project an image of confidence and competence. And we needn't limit our enthusiasm to our work or other activities. We can be enthusiastic about sitting down with a friend for coffee, walking around the block with our mother, or taking our neighbor to the repair shop to pick up her car. The energy of the enthusiasm we emit is felt by those around us as warm and happy. It's not always easy to be excited about many of the things we do on a day-by-day basis, but it's possible if we only make the effort. Smile. Charismatic people know how and when to smile. Dale Carnegie offers some suggestions on the art of smiling. He noted that first we must have the right mental attitude toward the world and its people. But even smiling perfunctorily will help, for it will create happiness in others, and that will be emitted positively toward us. To generate a pleasant feeling in another will make us feel more pleasant, and pretty soon we will mean that smile. Also, when we smile, we will be stifling any unpleasant or artificial feeling we may have been experiencing within ourselves. Try the smiling habit. It's a wonderfully simple way to feel good inside and to tell the world around us that we're someone nice to have around. Let us make one point, that we meet each other with a smile when it is difficult to smile. Mother Teresa. Some and substance. A pleasant, welcoming image can be developed. Although some facets that make up our image are inborn, our physical appearance, basic intelligence, and some talents, each of us has the capacity to make the most of our innate traits and to develop them to give us that type of image that others will admire. People who are enthusiastic about themselves and their actions undertake their work with the assurance of success. The world has always made way for enthusiasm. It multiplies our power and raises whatever ability we have to its highest level. And by smiling, we send the world a signal that we are pleasant, positive people, and we generate warm feelings in others. Smiling is a simple way to develop affable relations. Step 4. Become a good conversationalist. The ability to engage in interesting conversation is one of the greatest personal assets a man or woman can have. It's a great aid to business and social success and also makes for greater enjoyment of the company of others. There is nothing that enables us to make so good an impression, especially upon those who don't know us thoroughly, than the ability to converse well. It makes us welcome and engaging in all sorts of company. It helps us to get on in the world. It sends us clients, patients, customers, and friends. It is the tool that will enable us to persuade people to accept our ideas, follow our leadership, and buy our products. People who can talk well, who have the art of putting things in an attractive way, have a very great advantage over those who may know more than we do about the subject, but who cannot express themselves with ease or eloquence. In fact, research shows that non-cognitive skills, those that go toward socialization, are much more important in terms of professional success than we traditionally think. There are 4 ways and only 4 ways in which we have contact with the world. We are evaluated and classified by these 4 contacts: what we do, how we look, what we say, and how we say it. Dale Carnegie. What makes for a good conversationalist? Intellect, brain power, and expertise in a field can be helpful, but they are not the main reasons a good conversationalist holds the attention of others. We must make people feel our empathy, feel that they have met a sincere person. Instead of greeting people with a stiff, "How do you do?" or "Glad to meet you," without any feeling or sentiment in it, we should look people we meet squarely in the eye and make them feel our personality. Give them a smile and a kind word that will make them glad to meet us. Be warm. Cultivate warmth. Fling the door of our heart wide open. A warm, glad handshake and cordial greeting will create a bond of goodwill between us and the people we meet. They will say to themselves, "Well, there's a really interesting personality. I want to know more about this man or woman." They see something in me, evidently, which most people don't see. This ability to engender a strong feeling of connectedness with others is a trait mastered by President Clinton. Those who meet him invariably say that they feel he is really looking right into their hearts when he speaks with them. Such a feeling creates an immediate intimacy. It's not just what we say, but how we say it. Keep in mind that we express ourselves not only through the words we utter, but also by the tone of our voice, the expression on our face, our gestures, and our bearing. Looking others in the eye and really listening to what they are saying is enormously impactful. If we look around the room, if our facial expression is not one of attention and compassion, or if, heaven forbid, we look at our device when someone is speaking, we send the signal that the other person is not important to us. That is a great way to lose someone's interest in getting to know us better, or to do business with us in the future. We will know when we have related well with someone. The mingling of thought with thought, the contact of mind with mind develops a special connection. Conversation should be like juggling. Up go the bowls and plates, up and over, in and out, good solid objects that glitter in the footlights and fall with a bang if you miss them. Evelyn Waugh, British writer. Be truly interested in others. With a difficult economy, we may feel that everything bores us that doesn't bring more business or more money, or that doesn't help to attain the positions for which we are striving. Instead of enjoying our friends, we're inclined to look upon them as so many rungs in a ladder, and to value them in proportion to their ability to provide us with patients, clients, customers, or some other business asset. But no one wants to feel that he or she is just a connection for something else. If we simply connect with the person with whom we're speaking, he or she will enjoy the time spent with us, and sending others our way will be a natural outcome of that event. No one can make a good conversationalist who is not empathetic. We must be able to enter into another's life, to live it with the other person, to be a good listener or a good speaker. Good conversationalists are tactful. They are interesting without being offending. Try finding out what interests the person we're speaking with. When we meet a new person, it is important to get as much information as possible about him or her. One way to do so is by asking questions. They should not be an interrogation. Just a few well-chosen questions will start the ball rolling, and the conversation will flow. This is a delicate process, as we don't want to appear to be nosy. Only ask those questions that are appropriate for the situation in which we are involved. For example, some questions are appropriate when talking to a person on a business matter, others in social situations, etc. In the latter, questions about the area in which the other person lives, his or her hobbies or interests, family, or mutual acquaintances often are good starters. Other good conversation openers are about schools or colleges attended, recent current events, but be wary of politics. We don't want to engage in a disagreement. Or pick up on a comment made by the other person and ask about it. We can also tell someone that we like her shoes, top, or handbag. This approach can be a bit more challenging when speaking with a man, to start up a discussion. When meeting people in a business setting, good starters are questions about the industry and company the person represents, news items that affect that industry, and questions about the nature of his or her job or career. It's not necessary to have a list of questions we plan to ask. Once the conversation is underway, comments and responses will flow easily. The most fruitful and natural exercise for our minds is, in my opinion, conversation. Michel de Montaigne, French essayist. Put others at ease. Lincoln was master of the art of making himself interesting to everybody he met. He put people at ease with his stories and jokes, and made them feel so completely at home in his presence that they opened up their deepest selves to him without reserve. Strangers were always glad to talk with him because he was so cordial and quaint, and always gave more than he got. A sense of humor such as Lincoln had is, of course, a great addition to one's conversational power. But not everyone is a comedian, and if we lack a good wit, we'll embarrass ourselves by attempting to be funny. If we aren't entertaining in that way, no matter. We can be pleasant and engaging without being overly serious. Therefore, to be a good conversationalist, we must be spontaneous, buoyant, natural, sympathetic, and must show a spirit of goodwill. We must feel a spirit of connection, and must enter heart and soul into things that interest others. We must get the attention of people and hold it by interesting them, and we can only interest them by a warm empathy, a real, friendly empathy. How we project our ideas, our attitude, the spirit we radiate, our personality, will have everything to do with our conversational proficiency. The impression we make will be a tremendous factor in our success. Learn and remember names. When meeting a new person, make a special effort to learn his or her name. If a name is not clearly pronounced, it is not impolite to ask that it be repeated. Using the name during the conversation helps set it firmly in our mind. Follow these suggestions. 1. Determine which part of the name to use. Americans usually use first names unless the other person is significantly older or has higher authority. Then use Mr. or Ms. until he or she instructs you to do otherwise. In other cultures, one always uses the formal Mr., Mrs., Ms., or a title, like doctor, professor, etc., unless invited to be less formal. 2. Create a mental picture linking the name with the person. Don't think in words, think in pictures. When we meet Julie, picture her bedecked with jewelry. Sandy's dappled hair reminds us of a beach, and George is visualized as standing at the edge of a gorge. 3. If the name is the same as or similar to that of a relative, friend, or another person we know, picture the new person with that person. And finally, 4. Repeat the name in conversation, but don't overuse it, which will sound deliberate and awkward. Most importantly, repeat the name to ourselves until it is firmly established in our mind. Remember, a person's name is, to that person, the sweetest and most important sound in any language. Dale Carnegie. Listen. Really listen. Conversation is a two-way street. One way is what we say, the other is what the other party says. Too often we are so involved in what we are saying or in thinking about what we want to say next that we don't give adequate attention to what the other person is saying. Suppose someone brings us a problem and asks for help. We may begin by listening attentively, but before we know it, our mind may wander. Instead of listening to the problem, we're thinking about the pile of work on our desk, the telephone call we planned to make when this person walked into our office, or of the argument we had with our daughter when we drove her to school this morning. We hear words, but we're not really listening. This happens to all of us. Why? Our minds can process ideas considerably faster than we can talk. When someone is talking to us, our mind tends to race ahead, and we complete the speaker's sentence in our mind, sometimes correctly, but often differently from what the speaker says. We hear what our mind dictates, but not what is communicated. To get an awareness of how well we listen, answer yes or no to the following questions. 1. Do I keep interrupting when somebody is trying to tell me something? 2. Do I look at papers or my device during the discussion? 3. Do I come to a conclusion before I hear the whole story? 4. Does my body language signal lack of interest? 5. Do I hear only what I want to hear and block out everything else? 6. Do I show impatience with the speaker? 7. Do I spend more time talking than listening? 8. Does my mind wander during the discussion? 9. Do I think about my rebuttal or responses while the other person is speaking? And finally, 10. Do I ignore nonverbal signals from the speaker that will tell me the speaker wants me to respond? If the answer was yes to any of these questions, our listening skills need improvement. Becoming an active listener. An active listener not only pays close attention to what the other party says, but asks questions, makes comments, and reacts verbally and non-verbally to what is said. One way of improving our listening skill is to take an active role as a listener. Instead of just sitting or standing with our ears open, follow these guidelines. 1. Look at the speaker. 2. Show interest by our facial expressions. Smile or show concern when appropriate. 3. Indicate that we are following the conversation by nods or gestures. 4. Ask questions about what's being said. One way is to paraphrase. So the way I understand it is... Or ask specific questions about specific points. This technique not only enables us to clarify points that may be unclear, but also keeps us alert and paying full attention. 5. Don't interrupt. A pause should not be a signal for us to start talking. Wait. 6. Be an empathetic listener. Listen with our hearts as well as our heads. Try to feel what other people are feeling when they speak. In other words, put ourselves in the speaker's shoes. 7. And be aware that answering the phone when conversing with somebody not only disrupts the flow of our thoughts, but also it's rude. It sends the message to the person with whom we're speaking that they are not as important as the person calling. If we know we're expecting an important call, inform the person with whom we're speaking that we must answer the phone and apologize for the interruption. 8. If we're at our desk, we must be certain to not be distracted by other work. Put any papers in a drawer and close our documents on our screen so that we won't be tempted to read them. And of course, we must not look at our mobile device during the conversation. 9. Be aware of our body language. Perhaps we might lean forward slightly in our chair to get physically closer to the other person. This posture enables us to be more attentive and helps us to maintain eye contact. It also shows the other person that we're truly interested in getting the full story he or she is relating. And finally, 10. Don't think about our rebuttal. It's tempting to pick up 1 or 2 points that the speaker is making and plan how we will respond to them. Do this and we'll probably miss much of the balance of what is being said, often the really important matters. Concentrate on what is said through the entire process. When dealing with people, remember you are not dealing with creatures of logic, but creatures of emotion. Dale Carnegie. Telephone conversations. Every time we pick up the telephone, whether to make or receive a call, we're making an impression on the person at the other end of that line. In face-to-face communication, there are many tools that help us to make good or bad impressions. Our facial expressions, our gestures, and the like. With the telephone, there is only one tool, our voice. Most people don't really hear themselves as others hear them. The best way to obtain a true concept of how we sound to others is to record several telephone calls and evaluate how we sound when we replay them. Note that some people have developed the habit of speaking too loudly while on mobile phones. Ask your friends if you have that habit, and if so, be very mindful of the volume level of your voice when on a business call. Our attitude. One of the prime characteristics of effectively conversing with others is to be friendly. When we listen to recordings of ourselves on the phone, do we sound friendly on those recordings? Or do we sound abrupt or annoyed? A call might come at an inopportune time. We may be pressed by a demanding boss or a deadline that we're trying to meet, but our caller does not know this. We must discipline ourselves to put everything other than that phone call out of our mind. That includes turning away from our computer screen during the call. If we're on Facebook while we're speaking, we think that we're cleverly multitasking, but in fact, we're giving poor attention to 2 things. If we're upset about anything before picking up the phone, take a deep breath. Relax your muscles and clear your mind. Be calm. Be attentive, and the impression we wish to make, that of a concerned interest in what the person is saying, will be projected. Good telephone manners when receiving a call. When answering the phone at a place of business, always state who we are immediately. Instead of saying, "Hello," say, "Engineering Department, Sam Johnson speaking." We cannot assume that the person calling knows who we are. If we don't know the caller, ask for his or her name. If it's an unusual name, ask how to spell it. Write it down. When responding, use the caller's name. It demonstrates our sincere interest in that person and his or her problem. If we cannot provide the answer to the caller's questions within a few minutes, it is better to advise that we will call back rather than have the caller hold for a long time. If he or she prefers to hold or it takes longer than anticipated to respond, get back frequently so the caller knows that he or she has not been abandoned. Good telephone manners when making a call. The beginning and end of a telephone conversation are critical points. Begin the call with a welcome attitude that shows we're glad to be talking to that person, and we recognize that we appreciate his or her willingness to speak with us. If we are not known to the person we are calling, introduce ourselves and state why we are calling. Plan all calls before picking up the phone. If we have to cover several items in a call, make a list of these items. Note the major points we wish to make for each of them. Follow our plan when talking, and the call will be accomplished more effectively and in less time than if we don't plan ahead. But of course, listen to the speaker. We may need to adjust our original plan if the conversation takes an unanticipated turn. Small talk. There is nothing really small about small talk. This non-business style of conversation has the potential to build connections and become the foundation for ongoing relationships. Becoming adept at small talk doesn't require an exhaustive knowledge of current events. It simply requires the ability to focus the other person on his or her favorite topic and ask questions that indicate interest. Even talking about the weather can be an icebreaker. A little small talk before a business discussion is a surefire way to build rapport. Sum and substance. Do's for good conversation. 1. Do be prepared. A good conversationalist engages his or her listeners and stimulates discussion. Hone our conversational skills by keeping up with trends and current events. 2. Do learn the name of the person with whom we are speaking and use it in conversation. 3. Do make eye contact. Looking directly at the other person is an indication that we are listening. But don't stare at the other person. Move our eyes around so we observe their entire face. 4. Do know when to speak and when to listen. Conversation should be give and take. Each person involved in a conversation needs to speak and each needs to listen. Participate, but don't monopolize. 5. Do express an interest in what's being said. Acknowledge statements with a nod, comment, or question when appropriate. And 6. Do ask open-ended questions to promote communication. That is, questions that require more than a yes or no response. Don'ts for good conversation. 1. Don't talk too softly or too loudly. Judge our volume by the closeness or distance from our listeners. 2. Don't monopolize the conversation. Give the other person or persons a chance to talk. 3. Don't interrogate. Questions should be presented in a friendly and non-aggressive manner. Use open-ended questions so the other person can express his or her ideas freely. 4. Don't interrupt. Let the other person complete his or her comment before presenting ours. To be an effective listener, try doing the following. 1. Listen empathetically. Try to feel what the other person is feeling when he or she speaks. 2. Remove all distractions. Turn off the telephone. Remove all papers not pertinent to the conversation. 3. Make sure we understood what was said by rephrasing what we heard. 4. Clarify any uncertainties after the other person has spoken. And finally, 5. When on the telephone, be warm and cordial, and be sure to listen carefully to the other person. Don't allow other concerns you may have or distractions to divert your attention. Step 5. Speak in public with confidence and conviction. Today, with our personal information and photos all over the internet, we live very public lives. But our constant disclosure occurs behind a screen, and it doesn't make us any more comfortable when circumstances require us to speak in public. A presentation to one's colleagues at work can be very intimidating to those unaccustomed to more deliberate in-person communications. This chapter will show how we can prepare for a public presentation and how we can win over our audience. Structuring the informational presentation. An innovative presentation will keep our audience intrigued, but it's best to save the innovation for the subject matter. In terms of how we make our presentation, following a traditional structure helps to ensure our success. 1. Opening, statement of topic. Our opening statement in which we lay forth the topic should be brief and clear. This is particularly important when the presentation is part of a longer series of presentations, such as a staff meeting or full-day training session. 2. State key message, desired end result. Our key message statement should give the audience a clear picture of our central message. It should answer this question in our audience's mind: why should I listen to this presentation? We should follow our key message statement with the central points we will make and the expected results, in straightforward language. In general, the fewer words, the better when stating our points. To emphasize the key message of our presentation, to inform, we succinctly restate the key message or the desired end result of our presentation after giving the central points. 3. Types of evidence. Once we've told our audience what we want to convey, we must present evidence to support it. There are several forms of evidence we could use. In addition to facts and statistics, we can rely on Analogies, in which we compare our topic with something that the audience members will understand. Testimonials, which are statements by those who are familiar with the subject matter about some aspect of it. Demonstrations, in which we show the audience how something happened or might have happened. Remember Atticus Finch throwing the ball to Tom Robinson in To Kill a Mockingbird? Examples such as stories that show our subject matter and application are an engaging way to make our topic come alive for our listeners. Exhibits, which are visual aids that explain the information we're trying to convey in a form to which the audience can relate. Presentations are more interesting and engaging when we find ways to use visual aids to make our points. Turning data into a graph or chart makes our message more quickly and easily understood. Diagrams and photographs pull our listeners' attention to our presentation. People tend to learn faster and remember longer a subject in which the listening is augmented by visual images. 4. Closing. As we conclude our talk, we'll want to succinctly repeat each of the central points we've made and the expected results. By summarizing our major points, we leave the audience with a final impression that is clear and memorable. If transitioning into a question and answer session, repeat the summary after the Q&A. Lastly, as we conclude, thank our audience members for their attention and commitment. Structuring the persuasive presentation. Perhaps our talk is aimed at getting our audience members to do a particular thing, or we want them to leave the room with a particular belief. To do so, we can modify the previous presentation outline slightly using the 3 components that follow in the body of our talk. These guides to presenting content help to guarantee that our presentation will be a vibrant, forceful speech. 1. Incident. When delivering our presentation, we should almost always begin with an incident or anecdote that illustrates the point we plan to make. Doing so will capture the attention of our listeners and makes our communication more conversational. 2. Action. The second component of the magic formula, the action, is what we want the audience to do. It may be to buy our product, to write their congressman, to stop smoking, or just to think more about the subject. When using the magic formula, be sure that both our action and benefit steps are brief, clear, and specific. Remember, our point must communicate what action we want our listeners to take. The more specific the action step, the better. To communicate clearly, identify one specific action and one specific benefit. And 3. Benefit. The third part of the formula is the benefit the listeners will receive by doing what is asked for in the action step. For example, by using this component, we will reduce the time spent and lower the cost in manufacturing product X. Or, stopping smoking will not only make us healthier and enable us to live longer, but also will keep our families from the dangers of secondhand smoke. 4. Using the formula to advantage. Our ability to inspire others to take any action or to adopt a belief is largely dependent on our ability to communicate from our listeners' point of view. Early in the presentation, we must develop the trust of our listeners. Getting favorable attention and establishing the need to consider a new behavior or belief must be accomplished quickly. The use of an incident is an effective way to do this. To be persuaded to do a particular thing, they must see evidence that clearly, from their point of view, supports the stated need for action. The audience must not feel that they are being driven to a particular behavior or belief. They must see this behavior or belief as the logical option. We conclude with evidence to support what we believe is the best alternative and state what action to take or belief to hold and what the belief is to them, thereby inspiring our listeners to embrace the specific conduct or understanding that will yield the desired results. We should prepare a persuasive presentation with the end in mind, the action we want our listeners to take, and work back from that point. It's a good idea to make ourselves an expert on the topic, whatever it may be. We'll want good evidence to support our position. And finally, 5. Closing. When we wrap up our talk, we'll again want to repeat the action that we want the audience to take and the benefit of doing so. As with any talk, we'll be sure to thank our audience for their time and attention. Speakers who talk about what life has taught them never fail to keep the attention of their listeners. Dale Carnegie. Tips for effective talks. How to prepare and deliver talks. 1. If, in a longer talk, we are afraid we will forget what we want to say, we should make some brief notes and glance at them occasionally. Don't write the talk out word for word because we'll be tempted to read it. That is a very boring way to communicate. And because we want to have a conversational connection with our audience, we should never memorize our presentation word for word. 2. Fill the talk with illustrations and examples, as noted previously. By far the easiest way to make a talk interesting is to provide stories to illustrate our points. Tell how we, or someone we know, applied the point or give specific examples that we learned from our research of the subject. 3. Rehearse the talk by conversing with friends. We need not necessarily give a dress rehearsal, but we should try out the points that will be made in conversation with others to get their reaction. This enables us to discover which remarks elicit people's interest and will make us more comfortable when we're in front of an audience. 4. To communicate effectively, we must use more than just our voice. We must also use physical animation or gestures. They both engage our audience and keep us stimulated as we speak. 5. When planning to give a presentation, we should do our best to learn as much as possible about the audience's familiarity with the subject. Don't assume that the audience is familiar with industry or company jargon, abbreviations, or slang. It takes a little time to briefly define terms as we introduce them. If we commit to using actual words rather than acronyms or abbreviations, we'll ensure that everyone in our audience will understand our message. 6. Smile. Walk up to the podium with a warm expression. Remember that the expression on our face and the tone of our voice often speak louder than our words. We might think that it's more professional to have a serious demeanor, but a cold personality will not win audience members to our position. Regardless of whether we're talking in private or public, we can't win friends with a scowling face and a scolding voice. And finally, 7. Have a good time making the talk. If we don't enjoy speaking, how can we begin to hope that anyone will enjoy listening? Our mental and emotional attitudes are contagious. So if we're having fun, our audience will have fun too. Even if we're talking about a topic that we don't think genuinely interests us, make a point to find something about it that's exciting. Sum and substance. When presenting information to an audience, we should 1. Open with a statement of our topic. 2. State our key message and the result that we desire. 3. Provide evidence for our message, using a variety of forms such as exhibits and analogies. And 4. Close with a restatement of our main message and the desired action. When presenting a persuasive talk, we should use the 3 components of effective persuasion in the body of our presentation. They are 1. Cite an incident that illustrates our point. 2. State the desired action that we want our audience to take. And 3. State the benefit to the audience members. Good speech-giving principles include 1. Make notes for use as we speak. Don't memorize our talk. 2. Use examples and illustrations. 3. Research our topic well so we are an authority on the subject matter. 4. Rehearse our points by speaking with friends. 5. Use gestures and movement judiciously to keep ourselves inspired and our audience engaged. 6. Make a point of relating to our specific audience. And 7. Smile and have fun. Enthusiasm is contagious. Step 6. Manage good relationships. To have a harmonious environment wherever we are, we must treat others with fairness and respect, and we must earn the respect and goodwill of others. Being pleasant. If we want to have good relationships with others, we should consider how we like others to behave. We don't enjoy negative, critical people. Why would we think that others do? We should make up our minds firmly at the very outset in life that we will not criticize or condemn others, or find fault with their mistakes and shortcomings. Fault-finding, indulging in sarcasm and irony, picking at the flaws in everything and everybody, and looking for things to condemn are very dangerous habits. They are like deadly worms that gnaw at the heart of the rosebud or fruit, and will make our own lives gnarled, distorted, and bitter. No life can be harmonious and happy after this blighting habit is once formed. Those who always look for something to condemn ruin their own character and destroy their integrity. We all like sunshiny, bright, cheerful, hopeful people. Nobody likes the grumbler, the fault-finder, the backbiter, or the slanderer. The great American philosopher, Ralph Waldo Emerson, wrote that the world likes the man who sees longevity in his causes and good in the future, who believes the best and not the worst of people. It is just as easy to go through life looking for the good and the beautiful rather than the ugly, for the bright and cheerful instead of the dark and gloomy, the hopeful rather than the depressing, to see the bright side instead of the dark side. To set our face always toward the sunlight is just as easy as to always see the shadows, and it makes all the difference in how others experience us. Being cheerful and pleasant should not be underrated. Having a good demeanor has an enormous impact on the success of our social life as well as our success at work. If we don't presently have the habit of looking positively at situations and of being upbeat around others, we'll want to work on developing that attitude. Even if inside we feel grumpy or despondent, we should do our best to present a cheerful face to the world. Perhaps you've heard the phrase, "fake it till you make it." Well, faking it in that respect actually works. If we smile and greet others warmly, we actually do feel happy and warm. Try it. We can transform our personalities overnight if we wish. Be respected by others. Here are 5 guidelines to help us earn and keep the respect of others. These guidelines were designed for use at the workplace, but they apply to any situation. 1. Be trustworthy and keep confidences. Understand when it is and when it is not appropriate to share conversations and strategies. 2. Listen. Give others our complete attention when they speak and encourage them to express their concerns and interests. 3. Always use good manners, good listening skills, and appropriate language, and display congruency between our words and actions. 4. Be confident, energetic, and a self-starter. Today we hear people referred to as high maintenance or low maintenance. We want others to see us in the latter category, as someone who solves problems. 5. Be reliable, consistent, and accountable. And finally, 6. Speak well of others. Doing so shows that we are kind, respectful people. When someone speaks poorly of another person, all that tells us is that he or she is likely to speak poorly of us. The key idea is pretty simple. We must just follow the golden rule. Do unto others as we would have them do unto us. Dealing with difficult people. Of course, we're bound to encounter others who require a little extra effort when it comes to managing good relationships. Some people are stubborn, unreasonable, or even belligerent. Let's look at some techniques to keep our interactions smooth and positive. 1. Sensitive people. The overly sensitive often respond poorly to criticism, and the best way to deal with very sensitive individuals is to be diplomatic. Let them know that our goal is to be supportive, and even when we have something difficult to say, that doesn't mean that we are angry or unsympathetic. Assure them that they are valued, and we simply want the best for them. If we decide that we're unwilling to have difficult conversations with very sensitive people, it's up to us to accept the consequences. 2. Short-tempered people. We may come into contact with individuals who seem to get overly angry when something doesn't go their way. After the person calms down, have a heart-to-heart talk. Point out that we understand that it's not always easy for someone to control his or her temper, but that anger is not an effective or acceptable way of managing a problem. Stay calm. Follow the old adage, count to 10 before opening your mouth. 3. Negative people. We're bound to have relationships with negative people, people who find something wrong with everyone, every situation, and every idea. We probably know one or more persons who are constantly complaining, and this pessimism is wearing. One way to deal with negative people at the workplace is to acknowledge their arguments and then ask them to make an effort to overcome their reservations for the sake of the group. Make them part of the solution rather than an additional problem. When presenting new ideas to negative people, allow them to express their objections openly. Tell them, "You bring up some good points and I appreciate them. As we move into this new program, let's carefully watch for those problems. We must give this new concept a try. Let's work together on it and iron out the kinks." 4. Critical people. There are some people whose main joy in life is to point out the flaws and errors of others. People who play this game are either trying to show their superiority or compensate for their inferiority by making sure that we all see the imperfections of those around us. When we experience critical people pointing out an error, we need not give them any satisfaction. Make a joke about it. "Oh, what a blooper!" Or smile and say, "Thanks for calling it to my attention before it caused real problems." What we don't want to do is reinforce their behavior by chiming in. As mentioned previously, speaking poorly of others is not a way to earn respect. Keeping the peace. Sometimes those around us just can't come to terms about an issue. If disagreements or hostility about something are not addressed, they can have severe ramifications, resulting in long-term resentments. All parties involved must make an effort to diffuse the tension. Here are some guidelines. 1. Address the issue when tempers are cool. Little can be accomplished when participants are angry or emotionally distressed. Wait a short while for the tension to abate, but not so long that the negativity turns into resentment. 2. Before bringing the parties together, we may want to talk to each party separately to obtain his or her side of the story. Ask questions that elicit good information about what transpired and how the individual feels. Then, speak separately with questions. 3. Choose a neutral setting. If at work, bring all the parties involved into a conference room away from their usual workspace. If a dispute arises at home, don't resolve it in a person's bedroom. 4. If possible, treat the issue as a shared problem. Even if the conflict is between two people only, it affects everyone around them. 5. As the facilitator to the discussion, do not dominate it. Begin in a friendly way. For example, at work you might start with a comment such as both of you know, completing this project on schedule is of utmost importance. Now we've run into a snag that we must overcome. Mara and Corey, this is your project and you have differences on how to complete it. Let's discuss this and work together so we can reach agreement." At home you might say something like, "We've all agreed that we don't watch more than 1.5 hours of TV each night. Kids, let's come up with a plan on how to allocate this time rather than spat about it every evening." Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of creative alternatives for responding to conflict. Alternatives to passive or aggressive responses. Alternatives to violence. Dorothy Thompson, American author. 6. Neutralize the discussion. Avoid accusatory comments and making suggestions that one person or party is right or wrong. This advice works both in the workplace and outside it. When our children are squabbling, it's best if we can refrain from immediately pointing out the failure or poor behavior of one of them. 7. Talk about the problem, not the person. Very often, opponents in conflicts find fault with one another and/or blame each other for the issue. We frequently hear things like, "She never pays attention to me," and "He is always telling me what to do." These types of statements reflect what's behind the problem, but don't address the issue at hand. In order to move the discussion along on a positive note, steer the discussion to the problem. For example, you might say something like, "Tell me how the workload is distributed," or "What aspects of the job are causing the most problems?" 8. Stop talking and listen. Remember the old saying, "There's a good reason we have 2 ears and only 1 mouth, to listen twice as much as we talk." Problems can't be solved unless we learn all facets of them. Encourage the opponents to talk freely. Then, listen and learn. And finally, 9. Act on what we hear and establish expectations for future interactions. We want to resolve the conflict so that we can experience not only peace in the moment, but also positive behaviors in the future. To be respected by others, we must be polite, appropriate, and trustworthy. Sum and substance. 1. Greet others warmly and develop a pleasant demeanor. Simply smiling will go far to establish good relationships with others. 2. Earn others' respect by treating them thoughtfully. Remember the golden rule: do unto others as we would have them do unto us. 3. Manage sensitive people by encouraging and reassuring them. 4. Negative people should be acknowledged and allowed to express themselves. Make a point of letting them know that we hear them and will do our best to address their concerns, but don't encourage their negativity. 5. If people around us are critical, politely thank them for their input. If we don't respond well to their comments, they'll lose interest in regaling us with their criticisms. 6. To solve problems between others, it's best to take a neutral approach. Adopt the position that the problem is not being created by one of the parties. Allow each person to speak his or her mind and ask everyone to join together in developing a solution. Make a point of establishing how future disagreements can be managed. If we do a good job, we may find that the parties learn to resolve their own differences. Step 7. Overcome worry and fear. How often have we awakened in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, worrying over some problem we would have to face the next day or even far into the future? How frequently has our mind jumped to a problem that has worried us sick when in the midst of a joyous activity? Worry, or fear of any kind, is fatal to mental concentration and kills creative ability. Whether one is a scientist, artist, inventor, or business tycoon, one cannot concentrate if filled with fear, worry, or anxiety. Worry and fear are equally destructive to our social success. If we're constantly second-guessing ourselves, we can't relax and focus on the experience of others. We should harbor in our minds that fear is the enemy of this very success and happiness. We must break the habit of anticipating catastrophes that will probably never come. Anxiety and fretting will not only rob us of our strength and our peace. Stress has been shown to be highly detrimental to our physical health. Worry literally robs us of years of our lives. In this chapter, we'll focus on techniques to reverse the habit of worrying and to get over our inclination toward fear. The past is over. We cannot change it. The future is unknown. But today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. Anonymous. Live in the present. We're all familiar with the adage, "Be here now." These 3 words are excellent advice. Why spend our mental energy rehashing things that happened in the past? We can learn from them, but we can't change them. Indulging in relentless regret won't make anything any better. Similarly, there's no point in worrying about what will happen in the future. We must simply do what we can to obtain our desired outcome and then move on. For example, rather than worry about our performance on a test, we're better off studying for it. When faced with a problem, first ask yourself, what is the worst that can happen? then prepare to accept it and proceed to improve on the worst. Dale Carnegie. 9 ways to minimize worries. It's easy to tell somebody to stop worrying, but to actually do it is another matter. Here are some ways that often help. 1. Make a decision. When confronted with a worrisome problem, do not keep going over and over it ceaselessly in your mind. Face it once and for all and come to a decision. The truth is, it is very rare that we honestly don't know what to do about a particular situation. In our hearts, we pretty much always know the right answer. 2. Learn to distinguish between helpful thought and unhelpful worrying. Remember, worry is not the same as thinking. Clear thinking is constructive. Worry is destructive. 3. Take the necessary step or steps to resolve the problem. Once we've done what we can to put the issue to bed, we can indeed do just that. 4. Mind our own business. Many of us create problems for ourselves by interfering in others' affairs. Is the thing that we're focused on really our problem to solve? If we want to offer to help and that assistance is welcomed, fine. If the problem is not ours and our participation is not desired, we can and should step away. 5. Believe in ourselves. We often fret over how we're not appreciated or recognized for our achievements. Sure, it feels great to be praised, but we can put too much emphasis on how others view us. If we firmly believe in our own capabilities and strengths, we will worry less about other people's attitudes toward us. 6. Welcome change. Change is inevitable. No progress can be made without change. Yet too many of us fear change. It takes us out of our comfort zones. If changes are thrust upon us, instead of worrying that they will negatively affect us, focus on how they can make things better. Keep in mind that change is not limited to conditions that others foist upon us. Bold, confident people seek out change. They're not afraid to take risks. Those who feel good about themselves know that the change may not have the result they desire, but are willing to find out. 7. Be realistic about our abilities. One way to avoid feeling worry and stress is not accept more responsibility than we are capable of carrying out. We may want others to admire us so we can take on more than we can handle. We must be aware of our limitations. When asked to take on a special assignment when we are overburdened, we should decline diplomatically. 8. Keep our minds occupied. When our minds are not occupied with positive thoughts, we fill it with worries, often about matters that are trivial or even unlikely to happen. We must keep our minds occupied with positive, worthwhile matters. Reading inspirational books, listening to good music, meditating or concentrating on a worthwhile community project, an enjoyable hobby, or just about the joys and blessings of our lives will push out those worrisome thoughts. And finally, 9. Don't procrastinate. It's much wiser to simply get unpleasant tasks behind us than to just stew over them. We probably wouldn't worry about what people think of us if we only realized how seldom they do. Olin Miller, American humorist. Conquering fear. Even more detrimental than worrying is living in a state of fear. We've probably experienced some fear in our lives, so we know that it has a great effect on everything we do, or more likely don't do. Unfortunately, when we become depressed and discouraged about our affairs, when we are filled with fear that we are going to fail, we attract the very thing we dread. Program ourselves to defeat fear. Fear, however, is simply a mental habit, and since we are in control of our minds, we have the capacity to easily destroy by simply changing our thoughts. Faith is its perfect antidote. Indeed, faith in ourselves and our abilities will go far to alleviate our fears. One of the worst forms of fear is the brooding over failure. One way to overcome this is to write down all the possible positive outcomes that may occur and to read the list frequently. We must expect good things to happen. With time, we won't be surprised when they do. We must make every effort to give up fearful thoughts, just as we would quit any bad practice that causes us suffering. We must fill our minds with courage, hope, and confidence. We must not wait until fear thoughts become entrenched in our minds and our imaginations. When confronted with fears, we must counter them immediately. There is no fear so great or entrenched so deeply in the mind that it cannot be neutralized or entirely eradicated by its opposite. The opposite suggestions will kill it. Franklin D. Roosevelt was absolutely right when he said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." Fear is a bully and a coward, and all we have to do to conquer fear is to forget it is there. We can do it. Dale Carnegie. In overcoming our various fears, we should follow each one out to its logical conclusion and convince ourselves that at the present moment the things we fear do not exist save in our imagination. Whether they ever come to pass in the future or not, our fear is a waste of time, energy, and actual bodily and mental strength. Merely convincing ourselves that what we fear is imaginary will not suffice until we have trained our minds to throw off suggestions of fear and to combat all thought that leads to it. This means constant mindfulness on our part. When the thoughts of foreboding begin to arise, we must not indulge them and let them grow big, but change those thoughts and focus our minds in the opposite direction. If the fear is of personal failure, instead of thinking how little and weak we are, how ill prepared for the great task, and how sure we are to fail, we should think how strong and competent we are, how we have succeeded in similar tasks, and how we are going to use our past experience and rise to the present occasion. We will then do the task triumphantly and be ready for even more challenging ones. It is such an attitude as this, whether consciously assumed or not, that will carry us to yet higher places. This same principle of crowding out the fear by a buoyant, hopeful, confident thought can be applied to all the many kinds of fear that daily and hourly beset us. When our mental habit is negative, it is often difficult to change the pattern, but we absolutely can do it. Sometimes it's helpful to simply start doing something other than what we were engaged in when we started having fearful thoughts. This change in activity will require a different form of concentration and will often act as a switch. It is fear that keeps us perpetually struggling against terrific odds instead of overcoming them. Such fear comes from the false belief of an inability to cope with the problem, such as the fear that we won't be able to provide for ourselves or for our family. Convert that fear into faith, and we will not fail. Susan Jeffers, a popular self-help author of the 80s and 90s, recommended that we frequently say to ourselves, "Whatever happens to me, given any situation, I can handle it." Jeffers' premise was that we can move past our fears by looking them in the eye and remaining undaunted. Fear thought, the arch enemy of humankind, can be eliminated from the habit of thought only by facing it. As Emerson said, "Do the thing you are afraid to do, and the death of fear is certain." Sum and substance. Stay positive when faced with a problem and expect a good result. If we must worry, we must ask ourselves, what is the worst that can possibly happen? Prepare to accept the worst outcome and then improve upon it. No problem was ever solved by worrying. If the energy we use were channeled into constructive approaches to solving our uneasiness, we would overcome our fears and trepidation and be healthier and happier people. We are best off focusing on the present rather than brooding over the past or fear for the future. Ways to minimize worries. 1. Don't belabor decisions. 2. Learn to distinguish worry from constructive thought. 3. Mind our own business. 4. Believe in ourselves and our ability to cope with issues as they arise. 5. Don't fear change, but see it as a welcome opportunity to grow. 6. Be realistic about our abilities. 7. Keep our minds occupied. 8. Don't procrastinate. 9. We have the capacity to easily neutralize our fears by simply changing our thoughts. 10. Faith is the perfect antidote to fear. Fear always predicts failure. Faith predicts success. 11. Worrying about our fears being realized increases the likelihood that they will be. And finally, 12. Fear can be eliminated from the habit of thought only if we face it. Step 8. Become a true leader. Most people can be trained to be leaders. Over the years, many studies have been made on what the characteristics of an effective leader are. Although individual strengths and abilities may vary, the following represent the most commonly observed qualities of successful leaders. 1. They hold strong values and high ethical standards. In spite of what you may think about it being a dog-eat-dog world, the most successful people are often the most ethically motivated. 2. They lead by example, acting with integrity in both their professional and personal lives. Effective leaders see the rules applying to everyone, particularly themselves. They set a high moral ground and they don't ask others to engage in behavior that they themselves would not engage in. They keep their word in their personal interactions as well as their business dealings, knowing that maintaining their integrity is not in any way conditional. 3. They are knowledgeable about business goals and keep informed of changes. The best leaders are not removed from their business's challenges. They are available for advice and are willing to make hard decisions. 4. They are proactive and self-motivated to achieve results. Good leaders do not rest on their laurels. They keep up not only with the state of the art in their fields, but they improve their knowledge and understanding in a variety of areas. 5. They are strong communicators and exceptional listeners. Good leaders establish cooperative, collaborative climates in which all members of the group know their participation in decisions is welcome. 6. They are flexible under pressure and keep their emotions in check. They will not let failures or disappointments keep them from continuing to try and to encourage their followers to move forward. 7. They have positive attitudes. Effective leaders know that the practice of positive thinking increases their ability tremendously for 2 reasons. First, because it discovers latent ability, calling out hitherto unknown resources, and second, because it keeps the minds in harmony by killing fear, worry, and anxiety, and by destroying all the enemies of success and efficiency. 8. They nurture the cooperation and collaboration of their team. Good leaders know that internal competition and strife are causes of low productivity. They encourage and reward cooperation among the members of their group and with those outside the group. 9. They recognize and maximize the strengths of others. True leaders develop confidence and trust in their associates. Note that they think of them as associates, not subordinates. 10. They hold themselves and others accountable for results. They set standards which are understood and accepted by their associates. They recognize their own limitations and seek help when needed. 11. They're efficient and they manage their time effectively. They learn to prioritize and to minimize interruptions and distractions. And finally, 12. They have vision. Like Steve Jobs, a great leader knows what he or she wants to accomplish and what steps must be taken to achieve the goals. They look beyond meeting short-term objectives and keep the big picture clearly in their minds. The very essence of leadership is that you have to have vision. It's got to be a vision you articulate clearly and forcefully on every occasion. You can't blow an uncertain trumpet. Theodore Hesburgh, former president, Notre Dame University. The activities of a successful leader. To be effective as the leader of any group, you must balance people and process. If we're intent on fine-tuning everyone's skills and maximizing his or her aptitudes, we may be in a difficult situation if a key team member leaves. Being too process-focused results in the creation of great systems. But those systems may not be understood by or welcomed by the group. With the right balance, both commitment and productivity stay at their highest levels. There is only one way to get anybody to do anything, and that is by making the other person want to do it. Dale Carnegie. Communicating and coaching for results. When we create an environment where people get results, develop new skills, and become successful, we are fulfilling our highest calling as a leader. Communicating with strength and sensitivity, being a coach, and building people's abilities are a leader's highest priorities. Leaders serve. The true leader serves his or her group, not the other way around. The typical geometric figure we associate with most organizations is a triangle, with a boss or leader at the top. But leaders are not in their position to simply give orders. When you think about leaders in a political context, they're in office, at least in theory, to serve the public. That's why they're called public servants. Good leaders truly care about those in their group and seek to better the circumstances of group members. When surveys are made on what people want from a boss, among the very top of the list is someone who is there for me. Leaders empower. The word empower has become trendy, but the practice of empowering group members is not faddish. Empowered group members share some of the authority and control of the leader. In contemporary workplaces, team members contribute to how the work will be best performed. Empowering those around us helps ensure their commitment to and enthusiasm for a project. It's disheartening to be treated like a robot, and those who are not respected for all that they have to offer lose their interest in furthering the group's objectives. How do we become a leader? Some people are reluctant to take on leadership roles. To do so, they believe that they would have to have certain innate leadership traits, such as charisma, or that intangible personality that would empower them to influence others. It's true that some of the world's greatest leaders were born that way. They had that special charm that enraptured the public. But they are the exceptions. The majority of successful leaders are ordinary men and women who have worked hard to get where they are. Each of us can certainly acquire the skills necessary to manage and lead people. With a little effort, anybody who desires can learn to guide people in a way that commands their respect, confidence, and wholehearted cooperation. Acquiring the art of leadership. Many leaders like to refer to themselves as professionals. But is management really a profession? Professionals in other fields, such as physicians, lawyers, psychologists, and engineers, are required to complete advanced study and pass exams for certification. There are no such requirements to be a business leader. Some managers may have special education, such as degrees in business administration, but most are promoted from the ranks and have little or no training in leadership. Most leaders learn primarily on the job. In addition to the skills that we pick up along the way, we can learn to guide people in a way that commands their respect, confidence, and wholehearted cooperation. To do so, let's look at some of the less than useful ideas that prevail in our society about leading in business. Myth number 1. Management is simply common sense. What is common sense exactly? What appears to be sensible to one person may be nonsense to another. Often, the definition of common sense is culturally based. In Japan, for example, it's considered common sense to wait for a full consensus before making any decision. In the United States, this technique is often derided as inefficient and a waste of time. We tend to use our own experiences to develop our particular notions of common sense, but each person's individual experience provides only his or her own limited perspective. Leadership involves much more than the experience any individual may have. To be a real leader, we must look beyond common sense. We wouldn't rely solely on common sense to help with financial or manufacturing problems. we would call on the best possible expertise in these areas for advice and information. Why then should we resort to a less pragmatic base in handling human relations problems? We can learn a lot about the art and science of leadership by reading some of the many instructive books about the topic, and be thinking of how to best balance the needs of the people in our group with the processes that we are together performing. Myth number 2. Leaders have all the answers. Accept that we don't have all the answers, but be willing to admit as much. When we find that we're lacking in a certain area, we should do some research to become better acquainted in the field. It's also a good idea to network with those in our industry. One of the surest ways of influencing the opinion of others is to give consideration to their opinions and to let them sustain a feeling of importance. Dale Carnegie. Myth number 3. Leaders have to be tough. Leading by fear is still a common practice, but this is not a leadership style that we want to emulate. As we discussed in the last chapter, people who are fearful don't do things, and this is not the practice that we want our group members to engage in. Successful leadership involves getting the willing cooperation of our associates. As an aside, we should note that a revolving door of group members is not an effective way to achieve our goals. Just because we can ask people to leave doesn't mean that we should make it a habit. It's hard on morale and requires us to find replacement team members, which is both a cost in time and money. At the time of this writing, jobs are scarce, and so it might be tempting for leaders to cavalierly let go of team members who they don't particularly care for, or who don't contribute as much as the leader might like. It's always a good idea, however, to remember that times change. It wasn't that long ago when good quality team members were in great demand. It's much wiser to treat those around us well, regardless of how easily we might be able to replace them. When the job market opens up, the best people will leave for companies with more pleasant working environments. Employee turnover can be expensive and often devastating. Myth number 4. Praise results in complacency. Some leaders fear that if they praise a team member's work, that person will become complacent and stop trying to improve his or her performance. Studies show, however, that this is not the rule. Everyone likes to be appreciated and to hear that what he or she contributes is valuable. Think about how we would feel in a similar situation. If our roommate says, "Hey, thanks for doing such a nice job cleaning the garage. It looks great." Aren't we more likely to do it well again? On the other hand, if our roommate were to say, "The stuff on the top shelf is still disorganized. I thought you were going to really clean this place up," how inclined would we be to repeat that activity? To conclude, we can all acquire the skills of leadership. Some of the things a good leader will do are study how to be a good leader rather than rely on his or her common sense, be sensitive toward his or her group members and ask for their input, and be liberal with praise, as everyone likes to feel that he or she is valued. Sum and substance. 1. Effective leaders ask for the participation of their team members. They do not act as authoritarians. 2. Group members should be given every opportunity to use their talents, skills, and brainpower. 3. The good leader establishes a cooperative, collaborative climate. 4. Good leaders think of themselves as facilitators. Their job is to make it easy for their associates to accomplish their jobs. 5. Effective leaders are ready to take the initiative, to act rather than react. 6. The best leaders set high standards for themselves and then work hard to achieve their goals. 7. A leader will focus on getting things done and are not easily deterred. 8. Leadership is an art that can be acquired. With a little effort, anybody who desires to can learn to guide people in a way that commands their respect, confidence, and wholehearted cooperation. 9. Be friendly, fair, and consistent. The most effective leadership style is grounded on understanding human behavior and applying this knowledge in working with the people under our jurisdiction. And 10. Praise people for work well done. Unrecognized work is like an unwatered plant. Productivity will wither away. Step 9. Help others to succeed. Whether we're at the office, playing on a sports team, or participating in a volunteer group, everyone appreciates encouragement and help in succeeding. If we want a group effort to be successful, it's great if we can help develop and cultivate the skills and effectiveness of those around us. Orienting a new person. The first day on the job, or at a new school, or with a new organization, can set the stage for success or failure, happiness or discontent, cooperation or rebellion. We can help make the transition a smooth one by planning for the arrival of the new person and by being sure to spend a good deal of time that first day with him or her. Make a point of introducing him or her to each of the other members of the group. If we're in a work environment, we should specify what the person's job will be. In addition to the individuals who are part of the group, filling the new person in on the organization's culture is a great benefit. Each organization has developed over the years a philosophy, a special approach to dealing with problems, a uniqueness that makes it the group it has become. This culture is hard to put into words and often only can be absorbed by a new person in time. However, there are certain aspects of the organization's culture in which the newcomer should be steeped from the beginning. It can be useful to assign 1 or 2 people the duty of serving as informal guides for the new person, available to answer questions that may arise. Communicating with a group. When we're communicating with a group, we'll want to be aware that different individuals best absorb information in different ways. Some people understand best by being told, others by being shown. We'll also want to be sensitive to the fact that some people take a while to catch on. We should be prepared to repeat information or provide some individuals with special attention as required. Often we think that the people in the group understand what is desired, and then, after the activity is well underway, we learn that they misunderstood what is required of them, the point of the project or some other aspect of the activity. To avoid heading in the wrong direction, get continuing feedback. Of course, it's best to correct any misunderstandings before the activity starts. At various times during the course of the project or practice, check with the persons involved to assure they're all doing what is expected. 7 tips on coaching associates. 1. Meet with each associate on a regular basis to identify what that person can do to become more effective and what we can do to help. 2. Take action to correct poor performance or misunderstandings as soon as they're observed. 3. In training group members, keep in mind that people master tasks in small steps. Build the training by first giving the associate small tasks and work up to more complex ones. 4. Encourage slow learners by praising their efforts and reinforcing the training to help them catch up. 5. We should serve as role models to all group members by our own pursuit of improving our performance and our application of new approaches to the work. 6. Pass on tips, information, and ideas that we acquire to team members. This may take the form of articles we read and clip, internet resources we email to them, or sharing new concepts verbally. And finally, 7. Delegate responsibility to group members. Give them the autonomy to make decisions and to devise their own ways to approach a task or problem. Coaching the team. As much work today is done in teams, it's not enough to train each member of the team to perform superbly. Equally important is merging the group members into a coordinated working unit. For a team member, it starts with a thorough orientation on the objectives of the team, what is expected from each associate, and from the team as a whole. This can be done in group sessions or, when a new member is added, one-on-one. As a rule, the more time we spend orienting our group members to the tasks and to one another, the better the success rate of the group's efforts. Give pep talks. Whether our team is made up of volunteers at a soup kitchen, or of our own fraternity brothers, we should think of ourselves as a coach. Just as the coach gives pep talks to an athletic team before the game and during breaks, team members should find that pep talks stimulate production and reinvigorate members when their enthusiasm wanes. A pep talk is more than yelling, "Go, team, go!" An effective team leader provides the team with understanding as to what they need to change to be more effective, and works with them to make those changes. Pep talks help push the team forward for the short term, and often that's enough to pull it out of a rut. For more lasting effect, we must keep the team alert to its progress. It's important to praise every accomplishment, celebrate reaching interim goals, and give recognition to team members who make outstanding contributions. We've probably been to events held by not-for-profit organizations that honor those who've donated their time or money to the group. Recognizing these people serves both to reward their efforts and to inspire them to stay involved with the organization. Good leaders, like good coaches, also train people to give themselves pep talks. By showing associates that we have confidence in their ability and in helping them build up this self-confidence, we are performing one of the most important functions of our job as a leader. Successful coaches work with people to keep up their spirits when they are depressed, to retrain them when they forget the fundamentals of the job, and to glory with them about their triumphs. They understand their personalities and model motivational programs that will best take advantage of these factors. Effective coaches don't give up easily when some people do not meet expectations. They work with their group members and do their best to bring them up to the high standards set for the team. Helping others cope with change. Perhaps our group will be getting a new leader or has been asked to take on a new project. Changes to our team's key personnel or activities can be stressful. People tend to favor that which they know, and they resist change. They particularly resist change for which they don't see the need, when the change is not appealing to them, or when they believe that they won't succeed in the changed environment. The effective coach addresses his or her team members' concerns about change and creates an atmosphere where people are consistently motivated to attain high performance levels. Be a mentor. Develop others to be mentors. One of the best approaches to developing our group's members is to encourage experienced associates to mentor newcomers. The person being mentored will get not only a head start for advancement, but also greater know-how about the activities of the group, the subtleties and nuances of contributing to the organization, and the tricks of the trade. It would be a major benefit to organizations if everybody had a mentor. If we're leaders, we should consider mentoring a requirement, not only for ourselves, but also for all experienced associates. By structuring a mentoring program and assigning our best people the responsibility of mentoring a new associate, we take a giant step forward in making the newcomer productive and on the way to personal growth. Both the mentor and the person who is mentored benefit from the process of mentoring. Obviously, those who are mentored learn much from the process, but equally important, the mentors gain by sharpening their skills in order to pass them on. It heightens the mentor's sense of responsibility as they guide their mentees through the maze of an organization's policies and politics. It also makes them more effective in their interpersonal relationships. A mentor is someone who sees more talent and ability within you than you see in yourself and helps bring it out of you. Bob Proctor, author, speaker, and success coach. Correcting errors. Even the most competent people will make errors from time to time. If it's our responsibility to correct such errors, we must do this without causing resentment or making the team member feel inadequate or inferior. It's best to address any situation as soon as it comes up. We should not wait until the situation reaches intolerable proportions and then explode in a rage. So act early, while the situation and our responses are manageable. Here are some suggestions on how to diplomatically correct errors, teach the group member how to correct them, and avoid making future errors. 1. Research. Do the homework to make sure we have all the facts before discussing the issue with the associate. Our aim is not to build a case, but to gather information. We must keep an open mind and look behind the facts to better understand motivations. 2. Rapport. When we meet with a person who has made a mistake, it is best to begin by putting that person at ease and reducing the anxiety. One way to do this is to begin with honest appreciation that is supported by evidence. Instead of just giving a general compliment, choose a behavior that we have observed. Maintain a policy of keeping our relationships warm so the other person is open to our input. Conduct the discussion in private. Don't say or do anything that may cause the person to feel embarrassed or lose face in front of others. Adopt the attitude and actions we want the other person to exhibit. If we speak quietly and calmly, it's likely the other person will do so in return. If we view the fault as small and easy to correct, the other person may adopt the same attitude. 3. Relate to the situation. Essential to success in correcting a problem is to focus on the problem and not the person. Eliminate personal pronouns and depersonalize the problem. It was the action that was wrong, not the person who did it. We should listen to the person to understand and to determine whether he or she is accepting responsibility or blaming and avoiding responsibility. Our goal is to gather facts and information so we are able to accurately identify the problem and determine why it happened. By not being accusatory and not jumping to conclusions, different perspectives will surface, and the root cause of the problem may be identified. 4. Restore performance. The purpose of this step is to remedy the problem, to reduce the chance of the mistake happening again, and to restore the person's performance. This step should be handled differently with the group member who accepts responsibility than with the one who blames and avoids taking responsibility. With the responsible person, effective questioning, listening, and coaching can be used to encourage him or her to suggest ways to correct the situation. Involve the associate in the problem analysis and decision-making process. For the blaming or avoiding employee, we may first need to reaffirm performance expectations and coach him or her to accept responsibility and to restore accountability. 5. Reassure. This step is focused on the person. Obviously, a person who has made a mistake may feel, to some degree, like a failure and is likely to be less inclined to approach the next opportunity with confidence. We want to help the associate see that he or she is valued. Note that an individual who does not accept responsibility should leave with a sense of accountability and an understanding of what the organization's expectations are. That person should also understand that we are interested in and committed to his or her success and growth. Sum and substance. 1. As a group leader, our job is to develop and cultivate the skills and effectiveness of our team or staff members. 2. One way to help a newcomer get started and learn the inner workings of the company is to assign an associate to him or her who will be available to answer questions and guide him or her through the maze of the organization's practices. 3. At the time instructions are given, ask questions about the key points as they are presented. Ask the listeners to tell how they interpret our instructions. Where pertinent, ask just how they intend to follow the instructions. 4. Just as a coach of an athletic team is constantly on the alert to identify areas where improvement can be made for each team member, so successful group leaders seek to work with each of their group's members. 5. Team leaders find that pep talks stimulate production and reinvigorate members when their enthusiasm wanes. 6. Good leaders recognize every improvement and good point. When special achievements are accomplished, the leader praises the team and reiterates how the cooperative efforts of the team members contributed to the achievement. 7. One of the best approaches to developing our people is to mentor them. This gives the mentee some hopeful know-how about the group's activities and the culture of the organization. And 8. To avoid resentment and assure cooperation, when correcting an associate's mistakes, focus on the problem, not the person. Step 10. Resolve conflicts. All of us want to be happy and to live in a peaceful environment. But in our jobs, our home, or any aspect of our activities, conflicts may develop that disrupt the harmony of our lives. Much has been written about creating and maintaining a happy family. But in this book, we focused on maintaining harmony in the workplace. But keep in mind that most of the suggestions on handling conflict are also applicable in resolving conflicts in our families and our social and community groups. It's only natural that in any group of people there will be misunderstandings, dissatisfactions, and just plain gripes. If we're not aware of conflicts, it does not necessarily mean that there are none. It may mean that we're simply not attuned to what is going on around us, or that the people who are having a difficult time aren't comfortable telling us about it. The line of communication may be blocked somewhere along the way. Problems that cannot be uncovered and adjusted or clarified fester in the minds of the aggrieved. At one time or another, perhaps at work or in our personal lives, we've undoubtedly found ourselves obsessing over what to do about a particular turn of events. The concern distracts us from what we want to attend to, and we have no peace. When we can assist someone in resolving a nagging issue, we help him or her refocus and again contribute to the group's goals in an effective way. Establishing open communications. Most people and organizations do a fairly good job of keeping the lines of communication open. To help resolve conflicts, we want to assure that a clear line of communication exists. That includes everyone involved with the group, every leader, and every member. If we're in charge, we'll want to make sure that all team members know that we have a policy of listening to concerns and complaints, and helping to resolve problems. We may want to have this policy in writing and to share it with members both when they join our group and on a recurring basis. When specific issues occur, we will want to have a personal chat with whoever is causing strife in our team. To be successful in easing difficulties between team members, we'll need for them to have confidence in our compassion and in our lack of bias toward the parties. So we must make every effort to demonstrate that we listen with an open heart and an open mind. Successful leaders see the opportunities in every difficulty rather than the difficulty in every opportunity. Reed Markham, American educator. Understanding responses to conflict. Conflict affects the people involved in a variety of ways. Indeed, most people are uncomfortable when faced with conflict and would rather avoid it. That said, barriers to conflict resolution arise when their deep beliefs and/or convictions are challenged or threatened. To help put out the fire when disagreements arise, it's useful to understand the typical responses to conflict. One common response to a problem is to personalize it or make it about ourselves, and when we do so, emotions are invariably high. Rather than focusing on the problem, we shift the emphasis to our opponent and the attack on ourselves. In this situation, it's our job to steer the parties back to a useful discussion. Make sure that everyone understands that the problem is external to those in disagreement about it, even if the problem is the behavior of one of the parties. Others may not personalize the disagreement, but feel isolated in their experience of it. In the belief that they are the only people feeling the tension or seeing the conflict, they retreat. This does nothing to change the situation. Similarly, there are also those who assume that they are outmatched in any type of conflict. This frequently takes the form of the belief that the opponent has more clout. They believe that they will lose and don't pursue a resolution of the issue. By letting all team members know that their opinions matter, and by providing concrete examples of how they can best share their concerns, the conflict can be addressed and resolved. Know that extremely sensitive people may need extra coaching when it comes to sharing their problems with others. To be of greatest assistance, we should make a point of frequently asking such individuals for their ideas and suggestions. And, of course, some individuals will not shy away from a conflict. They look forward to the battle and enjoy the adversarial process. Often such people sincerely believe that they are right and are unwilling to accept any other solution. Ideally, we want to view conflicts with an open mind and engage in them in a way that is constructive. We should encourage such people to value conflict as a pathway to creating healthy discussion, and to recognize that others are entitled to their viewpoints, even if they disagree with them. Ultimately, we ought to be able to find a win-win resolution. Moving beyond conflict. Managing our own emotional reactions is critical to keeping the lines of communication open in our group. To help others with the issues that arise among them, keep in mind the following principles. 1. See the viewpoints of others. It's best to try to ignore our own perspective when it comes to solving problems, and to try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. It's a good idea to think a bit about our own feelings and presumptions about a situation before we try to resolve. Are we inclined to think that one party is to blame? Do we favor a particular outcome? By looking first at our own predilections, we consciously set them aside when we turn to the issues of the conflict with an open mind. 2. Don't fuss about trifles. We're much better off not making a big deal over things that don't really matter, and we shouldn't participate in the unnecessary drama of others. If we see that a conflict is really a trifle, let it go, and ask others to do so too. Of course, we'll want to ask others whether, after they think hard about it, their issues are really not that significant. If someone is truly bothered by a situation or a conflict, we don't want to make light of it. Doing so is a way of telling them that they don't matter, and that their judgment is poor. With an awareness that many disagreements don't really matter much in the long run, we should remember to pick our battles and address concerns that can have a real impact on our goals and relationships. 3. Cooperate with the inevitable. If we can't change a situation, we have to learn to accept it. There's no point in having a perpetual internal battle over something that we can't control. Sometimes a decision is made, or a situation will continue, regardless of our position toward it, and by gripping or maintaining hostility toward it, we are merely generating more stress inside. And when we're stressed, it invariably impacts those around us. It's always wise to remember the words of the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And finally, 4. Don't seek vengeance. In our society, we tend to glamorize vengeance. In the movies and on TV, heroes are often people who seek revenge against those who have wronged them. In fact, however, seeking revenge is petty. If we've ever succeeded at it, we know that it doesn't provide any gratification. It just makes us feel bad in a different way. Anger, resentment, and hatred destroy our ability to enjoy our lives. By harboring anger toward someone and seeking vengeance, we're just letting that person control our happiness. It is much more powerful to forget about the situation. Personality profile. Are we contributing to problems? Too often we tend to blame others for causing conflict when the real cause may lie within ourselves. To better understand ourselves and how we tend to act in situations of conflict, listen to each of the following items carefully and place a number from the following answer scale next to each statement. So the number scale goes like this: 1 for seldom, 2 for sometimes, and 3 for most of the time. So before we begin, take out a piece of paper and along the left-hand side, number it 1 through 15. And remember that scale: 1 for seldom, 2 for sometimes, and 3 for most of the time. All right, here we go. 1. I can be swayed to adopt someone else's point of view. 2. I shut down people with whom I disagree. 3. When conflicts arise, I address the issue at hand diplomatically and do not attack the individual. 4. I think that others try to bully me. 5. I express my thoughts and beliefs tactfully when they differ from those of others. 6. Rather than offer my opinion when I disagree, I keep it to myself. 7. I listen to other people's points of view with an open mind. 8. When I disagree with someone, I tend to let my emotions get the best of me. 9. I raise my voice to make my point during an argument. 10. I tend to belittle other people when making my point. 11. I look for ways to negotiate and compromise with others. 12. I have been told I am too pushy. 13. I make sure I raise my voice in any controversy. 14. I think that conflict in meetings is inevitable. And finally, 15. I tend to be very vocal in meetings when trying to get my point across. Now let's score your personality profile. Add the total score from the following questions: 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, and 15. Then, subtract the sum of the score from these questions: 3, 5, 7, and 11. The resulting number is your final score. What does this number show? Let's take a look. If your score is 1 through 4, you are passive. You tend to avoid conflicts. You might allow difficult people or people with different opinions to have their way simply to dodge a disagreement, even if you are ill-served by the resulting situation. If your score is 5 through 10, you are assertive. You are assertive when dealing with difficult people or people with different opinions. This middle ground is a positive place to be on the scale. You share your ideas without being argumentative. You should continue to be open to listening to different points of view and to express your ideas and opinions appropriately. If your score is 11 or higher, you are aggressive. When you're not in agreement with others, you may be so combative that people avoid interacting with you at all. You'll benefit from learning to listen and express your opinions more effectively. If you have learned how to disagree without being disagreeable, then you have discovered the secret of getting along, whether it be in business, family relations, or life itself. Bernard Meltzer, radio commentator. Sum and substance. 1. Conflict that is not out in the open can be costly for an organization and for its members. If we let conflicts and resentments fester, we miss the chance to improve or make a change that can have a significant positive impact. 2. Most people are uncomfortable when faced with conflict. It disrupts the routine and makes them feel vulnerable. 3. To resolve conflict, take the pragmatic approach. 4. Use the conflict process as a means of developing more knowledge about the issues involved. 5. Aim for win-win compromise to resolve the problem. 6. Some guidelines to help us move forward from conflict in a productive way and without harboring resentment are: A. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. B. Don't fuss about trifles. C. Accept things that we cannot change. D. Decide just how much anxiety a thing may be worth and refuse to give it more. And E. Never seek vengeance. We are more satisfied if we turn the other cheek, rather than strike back at those we think have harmed us. And finally, 7. Be aware that we bring our own preconceived ideas and opinions to any situation. We must analyze our own feelings about a conflict and set them aside if we're to be effective at resolving the disagreements of others. Appendix B. Dale Carnegie's Principles. Become a friendlier person. 1. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. 2. Give honest, sincere appreciation. 3. Arouse in the other person an eager want. 4. Become genuinely interested in other people. 5. Smile. 6. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest sound in any language. 7. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. 8. Talk in terms of the other person's interests. 9. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. 10. To get the best of an argument, avoid it. 11. Show respect for the other person's opinion. Never tell a person he or she is wrong. 12. If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. 13. Begin in a friendly way. 14. Get the other person to say yes immediately. 15. Let the other person do a great deal of the talking. 16. Let the other person feel the idea is his or hers. 17. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. 18. Be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires. 19. Appeal to the nobler motives. 20. Dramatize your ideas. 21. Throw down a challenge. 22. Begin with praise and honest appreciation. 23. Call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. 24. Talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person. 25. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. 26. Let the other person save face. 27. Praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. 28. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. 29. Use encouragement. Make the fault seem easy to correct. And 30. Make the other person happy about doing the thing you suggest. Fundamental Principles for Overcoming Worry. 1. Live in day-tight compartments. 2. How to face trouble. A. Ask yourself, what is the worst that can possibly happen? B. Prepare to accept the worst. C. Try to improve on the worst. And D. Remind yourself of the exorbitant price you can pay for worry in terms of your health. Basic techniques in analyzing worry. 1. Get all the facts. 2. Weigh all the facts, then come to a decision. 3. Once a decision is reached, act. 4. Write out and answer the following questions. A. What is the problem? B. What are the causes of the problem? C. What are the possible solutions? D. What is the best possible solution? 5. Break the worry habit before it breaks you. 6. Keep busy. 7. Don't fuss about trifles. 8. Use the law of averages to outlaw your worries. 9. Cooperate with the inevitable. 10. Decide just how much anxiety a thing may be worth and refuse to give it more. 11. Don't worry about the past. 12. Cultivate a mental attitude that will bring you peace and happiness. 13. Fill your mind with thoughts of peace, courage, health, and hope. 14. Never try to get even with your enemies. 15. Expect ingratitude. 16. Count your blessings, not your troubles. 17. Do not imitate others. 18. Create happiness for others. And finally, 19. Try to profit from your losses.